Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about projected sales and change in sales, because that's basically our really kind of our starting point for a lot of these kinds of projections from a financial planning kind of standpoint. So really, we had to come up with a sales forecast. In a prior video, I talked a little bit about how you would get to a sales forecast in terms of top down or bottom up kind of approaches and kind of what's happening with that. In this little video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about sort of the math side of this a little bit. So if you're going to start off by kind of calculating out a like a percentage growth in sales or a change in sales, basically one of the things you would look at is the projected sales relative to the actual sales. So what I have here is projected sales for time t plus 1. So time t is basically the most recent period. T plus 1 would then be the next period, so the projected period. So in that sense, basically, I'm going to look at my actual sales for the most recent period. Then I'm going to look at what I'm projecting to occur. And basically, that's going to get me my projected sales figure. So if I want to calculate my percentage change in sales or projected growth in sales, I would take my projected sales that I come up with through maybe the top down or bottom up kind of analyses, divided by the actual sales, and then subtract 1 from it. And that's going to give me my projected growth in sales. Now, if you want to actually just write out the number, you multiply by 100 to have a percentage format. If you're doing that in Excel or something like that, we can basically just do projected sales over actual sales minus 1, and then that would be in decimal form. And then you just format it as a percentage in Excel, and then it would present it correctly. So that would be my projected growth in sales, so my growth rate, basically. Now, there's another way of looking at this. The other way to look at this is if I kind of rearrange things a little bit, if I don't have the times 100, because if I'm using the decimal representation here, basically what that would mean is my sales, my most recent sales at times t, times 1 plus a growth rate should give me my projected sales. So my most recent sales or current sales times 1 plus a growth rate would give me my projected sales. And that'll pop up in some context here in some subsequent videos. Another thing to look at would be my change in sales. So if you think about change in sales, let's suppose I most recently had $1 million in sales. I'm expecting to have $1.1 million of sales. So to find my change in sales, I take my projection of $1.1 million of sales, and then I subtract off my most recent sales of 1 million, and the difference is the $100,000. And so my change in sales would be $100,000. So all I'm showing in the formula here is just kind of reflecting the basically how I can calculate that in formula form. So I would take my projected sales. In my example, it's $1.1 million. My most recent sales of 1 million. Take 1.1 million minus the 1 million. My change in sales would be the $100,000 in that case. Now, an interesting little note, and this will come into handy in some subsequent videos here. If I take my change in sales and I look at this, well, what I could do, this ST plus 1, I have that defined up here as ST times 1 plus G. And so if I take that ST times 1 plus G and I substitute it into this formula for ST plus 1, I get this down here. So my change in sales is equal to ST times 1 plus G minus ST. And what happens with that is if you factor out the ST, what winds up happening is basically this collapses down to my change in sales is equal to ST times the growth rate. Now that kind of makes sense if you pause to think about it. If I was projecting out a growth rate of 10%, my most recent sales were 1 million. 1 million times 10% is 100,000. And so my change in sales is 100,000. And lo and behold, if I kind of work this out, 1 million times 1 plus 0.1, 10%. 1.1 times 1 million is 1,100,000 for my projected sales. 1,100,000 minus 1 million is the change in sales of 100,000. So either way, whether I actually project out the sales figures and then I subtract out the most recent sales to get my change in sales, or I just take the most recent sales times the growth rate to get to my change in sales, I should get to the same number. So that's something to kind of think about. But basically, keep those kinds of formulas in mind when watching some of the subsequent videos that I'm going to post, as they will that'll actually lead to some interesting little kind of simplifications that we can do. All right. So thank you so much for watching and have a great day.